Good morning, Don't Unfriend Me Nation. Matthew Spear from the Don't Unfriend Me Show. Good to have you here today. What are we talking about? Well, in the news is the Durham investigation. We know that this was actually put in motion by Barr in the Trump administration in regards to the Russian collusion. Russia, as Tucker Carlson, the former Fox News host, would say. But there's a little story I want to share with you that you may not know. This sounds dauntingly familiar when it comes to the New York Times and others who have received accolades and awards for a made-up story. Once upon a time, in a bustling city filled with newsrooms and eager journalists, there was a newspaper, a little one, known as the New York Times. The Times had always prided itself on delivering accurate and hard-hitting stories that captured the attention of millions of readers around the world. However, one particular story would forever tarnish its reputation and leave a lasting impact on the world. It all started with a young and ambitious writer named Walter Duranty. He was known for his eloquent prose and captivating storytelling. Walter had a penchant for digging deep into historical events and unearthing hidden truths. He believed that exposing the real story behind past atrocities would prevent history from repeating itself. At least he once did. Duranty was the Times' man in Moscow, as the line went, with a cushy apartment in which to entertain and extrapolate as much information and a reputation as a leading authority on the Soviet Union. Duranty had staked his name on the idea that Joseph Stalin was the strong leader the communist country needed. He's often accredited with coining the term Stalinism. In return, Duranty won rare interviews with Stalin and wrote glowingly about Stalin and his plans. One day, Walter began writing a long-forgotten tale about the Ukrainian famine. The more he wrote, the more he spun the tale that the true story of the Ukrainian famine, often attributed to Joseph Stalin's policies, had been distorted and exaggerated. Duranty remained unwavering in his defense of Stalin and his policies, even as famine unfolded. He used approved euphemisms like malnutrition instead of famine. And in that March 1933 story, Duranty appeared to justify Stalin's use of force. Quote, "To put it brutally," Duranty wrote, "you can't make an omelet without breaking eggs." In August 1933, Duranty started front-page stories with these words, quote, "The excellent harvest about to be gathered shows that any report of famine in Russia is today an exaggeration or malignant propaganda." Walter's conviction drove him to write an article challenging the prevailing narrative. He meticulously laid out findings, presenting evidence and alternative explanations for the Ukrainian famine. He argued that while the famine was undoubtedly a tragedy, it was not a deliberate act of starvation orchestrated by Stalin at all. He attributed the famine to a combination of natural factors, mismanagement, and flawed policies, rather than outright malevolence. He acknowledged the shortages affecting Ukraine and other agricultural regions, but added, quote, "There will be more than sufficient food to cover the nation's food supply for the coming year, and to justify the Kremlin's policy of collectivization." The Times editor recognized the potential impact of Walter's story despite initial skepticism from fellow journalists. The editor decided to publish the controversial article. He believed in journalistic integrity and providing a platform for diverse perspectives. Even they challenged the conventional wisdom, even if it wasn't true. As soon as the article hit the stands, it created a firestorm of controversy. People across the globe weighed in with heated debates, igniting in coffee shops, boardrooms, and living rooms, and especially Europe. The article divided public opinion sharply, and people were incensed, accusing him of downplaying the suffering of millions. Privately, a British diplomat recorded in September 1933 that Duranty had acknowledged to him that, quote, "as many as 10 million people may have died directly or indirectly from lack of food in the past year. Such an assessment never appeared in the public." The Pulitzer Prize Committee took note of the article's impact and nominated Walter for the prestigious award in the category of investigative reporting. His controversial piece had indeed ignited a much-needed conversation about historical accuracy and the role of journalism in shaping public memory or disillusion. But to the shock and surprise of many, Walter's article won the Pulitzer Prize. The announcement sent shockwaves through the journalistic community and sparked intense controversy even more. As the backlash intensified, the New York Times faced immense pressure to return the Pulitzer Prize. But they stood firm in their convictions. The Pulitzer Prize win becomes a defining moment in journalistic history. It symbolizes the power of controversial stories and the role they played in shaping public discourse, but it also lends credence to a story that is fictitious and false. It highlights the delicate balance between truth-seeking and public opinion, forcing newsrooms to reevaluate their standards and ethics, at least some of them. In 1931, the New York Times published 13 articles by its Moscow reporter and communist sympathizer Walter Duranty, praising the Soviet Union and dictator Joseph Stalin's government. These articles relied solely on unofficial and official Soviet communist sources and propaganda, ignoring the evidence and contradicting the government's own story. And it covered up the genocide Stalin was committing in the Ukraine. But the Pulitzer Board refused to withdraw the award, most recently in 2003, yet again. While the board admitted that there were substantial problems with Duranty's reporting, it refused to revoke the award because all principals people are dead and unable to respond. Apparently, concerns regarding an obvious lack of journalistic integrity are illegitimate once enough time has passed. Today, the New York Times and Pulitzer Prize Board have fallen into a similar scenario. In a series of 10 articles this time, Times reporters propagated a narrative detailing fictitious connections between the Kremlin and the Trump campaign, the president's transition team, and the administration. The Mueller investigation, as well as the Senate Intelligence Committee, affirmed that there is no evidence that President Trump or his staff conspired with the Russian government to impact the 2016 election. Special counsel John Durham is now indicating some of those who were involved in creating what amounted to a political hoax or even a coup that dogged the Trump administration for years. The Times first publicly acknowledged Duranty's misinformation in the 1980s, but did not issue a formal apology until 2003, 71 years after Duranty received his prize in 1932. The Durham report confirms that the president was framed as a traitor by the deep state and liberal Department of Justice, and there's nothing more anti-democratic than unelected security officials trying to take down a duly elected president. Yet the intel community is silent, the Pulitzer committee is silent, and the New York Times is silent. And what happened to our freedom and democracy that's supposed to be in jeopardy? What's new? This has all happened before, and this is just the stories we know about. After millions of dollars spent, years of investigation, and tens of thousands of man-hours, in the end, nobody cares. Because the old adage is true. Wait a problem out long enough, and it will just go away. The only caveat is, so goes our integrity. Despite these findings and the inaccuracies in the Times article, the Pulitzer Prize Board has not yet repealed the award, done 71 years from the Duranty and the miscarriage of justice that he ensued. But the Russian collusion story is also still in the ether. And it's important to note that this time all principals are alive and perfectly capable of responding. They just don't care or really want to. Folks, thanks for watching the Don't Unfriend Me show. I will be on live tonight with my wife, Olivia, and Leroy and Amy at 8 o'clock. Please join us across all social media at The Dumb Show. Pick yourself up a cool shirt and a hat if you want to at thedumbshow.com. 10% off. Use the code DUM10, DUM10, and 10% goes back to the Travis Manion Foundation for every purchase. Thank you so much. I'll see you tonight, and God bless.